only place I know of on the internet where gaming and disability combine into one fine point on the space-time continuum. I am Captain Gimpy, and this is Zenburo. Yeah.
Zenburo. Yeah.
So, today we're bringing you a little snippet from the advanced category of game accessibility guidelines from GameAccessibilityGuidelines.com. How fortunate that it's obviously named so people who don't know about it can hopefully find it. That's actually a really good thing. I'm not being sarcastic.
Yeah. So this is going to be the final part of the website called the advanced section.
So the deal is, okay, so the biggest difference I've noticed from the basic, the intermediate, and the advanced is like how early in the development process you implement these things. Like most of the stuff in the quote-unquote basic category are things that you can implement after the game has been released. Whereas the intermediate, from what I can tell, tends to be things that you can add like somewhere in the middle of development time, like when the game's almost done. It's not too difficult to add, but you're still better off adding them early. And advanced are things that you have to consider from the very beginning. And we only chose the things that we found most interesting, primarily because there is a lot of overlap, and you can go look at it yourself. Again, as always, we'll link things in the description. We'll link the document itself, plus some of the things that it talks about in terms of using something as an illustration of best practice. So, with that being said, here we go. I'll stop sounding academic like I have.
Just return to your creepy Halloween voice.
Like I have super Asperger's syndrome, which I probably do anyway. But,
yeah. But speaking of that, about the cognitive section in the advanced.
See what I did there?
Yeah. Allow narrative and instructions to be replayed. Now, this is one of those under talked about things, because people with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, or ADHD, for those who are unacquainted with psychiatric terminology, they have a hard time paying attention to things, because sometimes video game cutscenes and tutorials and stuff are really boring, and they can't maintain their attention for like 2 minutes. So having, let's say, the tutorials in a menu where you can review them, or replaying the cutscenes is always great. And I think you have something to say about that.
What are you talking about? I know. I'm great at it now. I'm kidding. So the thing is, I've seen some games try to do this. One thing not to do is to include a menu where you can review the tutorials, but that takes you out of the game. That is not a good idea, because then if you're in a situation where you need it immediately in terms of the context you're in, you gotta watch the tutorial, and then you gotta remember to do the thing. And if it's like a complicated process that's like more than maybe 3 steps, you're gonna forget a couple things. So it's best if the tutorial menu can be accessed in the game itself, instead of like having to exit the game and then go in the tutorial menu and then watch the tutorial, which is one of the reasons why I dislike games that didn't have a command list, like in fighting games, right? Like, it used to be common to have a training section but not a command list, so you had to exit the game in order to see a move list, because in arcade mode it wouldn't show you one. They've since stopped doing that very much. You don't really see it at all anymore, but it used to be a thing, and it was annoying. One of the things I will say is that I personally I've always had difficulty sustaining attention for super long periods of time. I know what you're saying. Everybody's kind of like that. Everybody's mind wanders. Not like this. I'm gonna tell you that right now. Not like that. Basically, my mind changes lanes every 3 to 6 minutes at most. At worst, it's like every 20 seconds. So, if I have to sit there and read like 10 blocks of text to figure out how to play a video game, I'm probably just gonna turn it off.
Yeah.
Especially if that all happens up front, where I have to read a bunch of shit before I can play. I'm probably just gonna turn it off and make him play it, and then explain it to me, and then I'll start playing.
Yeah, and usually I have to break it down to a point where it's...
Hey, I'm not a child.
But, yeah. Another thing I wanted to talk about in the cognitive was having pre-recorded voiceovers for menus and stuff.
Yeah.
Because if you have a hard time reading, it's going to be a challenge to navigate a menu or to enjoy the game's lore or something.
On that point, I don't know how many of you are familiar with classic JRPGs, but there were some that would only leave a certain piece of dialogue up for a certain amount of time, and if you didn't finish reading by then, you were SOL. Like, it would just keep going, and then you'd be behind in the story, and then being an RPG, you just lose interest in the game, because RPGs, if you don't know, I kind of don't know why you're watching this video, because it's about video games.
Yeah.
It stands for role-playing game. You're literally supposed to, like, identify with the characters and the story. It's narrative-driven.
Yep.
One of the best things that ever happened to role-playing games, in my opinion, was Mass Effect for that reason, because everything was voiceover. I mean, I know a lot of people were like, oh, I liked it when characters were silent and I could pretend that I was the person because they didn't have a voice. And Shepard sounding a certain way makes me feel like I lose my manhood. It doesn't matter if I'm playing FemShep and she's awesome, I still lose my manhood. I've heard dumb things like that on the internet. I'm being facetious, okay? But, by the way, FemShep is awesome. I prefer FemShep to Shepard. I don't know. The voice acting is way better.
Yeah.
Jennifer Hale's amazing. But one of the cool things is that with that game series, all of the games had pre-recorded, fully voiced dialogue for every part of the game, number one. Number two, the subtitles were timed in such a way that the subtitles would not disappear unless either A, you press the button to skip a section of dialogue because you've heard it before, or B, the character finished speaking those lines of dialogue.
Yeah.
So they were really well timed, so for those of us who have problems with tracking what line they're on, because my eyes, you see this one, it does weird things. So that causes problems when I read. It helped me be able to follow along, and listening to it and reading it at the same time actually helps cement like some of my favorite moments into this ADD riddled brain.
And that was another thing in the advanced thing about hearing, where it was categorized under hearing, creating more compact subtitles, and controlling the words per minute according to your target age group.
Dude, if you're making a game that 10 to 12-year-olds are supposed to be able to play, not all 10 to 12-year-olds are avid readers. You need to give them time to process that chunk of dialogue.
Yeah.
Or narrative in some other form, whether it's through a narrator or, some random onomatopoeia and like parentheses or some internal monologue or soliloquy for you theater idiots. I mean, people. Excuse me. Idiots was the wrong choice of word. You're not idiots. You're like pretty cool.
Did you want to talk about something else?
I'm about to. I totally screwed this up. This is how you know we don't rehearse, okay?
Yeah.
We just kind of decide what we're going to talk about, and then we talk about it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. One of the cool things that I didn't know existed was the idea that like menus could have screen reader support for visually impaired people, because you know they're not necessarily blind as in having no sight, although some people are. It helps for people who have vision issues. So like if you're mousing over a menu or scrolling menus with your controller, it will read what the menu says. So you'll know, oh, that says arcade mode. This is options, sound effects, you know, that sort of thing. That helps. Because if you have difficulty seeing, and mind you, there are other ways you could have difficulty reading, like dyslexia, where the font's kind of, I don't know, it's hard to explain. It does weird things. And then you think one word is another word, and then it's not, and then you're like, what? I thought I was clicking on philosophy, not I want to pee. Why did I go to this weird website? I'm joking. But,
yeah.
It helps that those options are available. In the description, we will have linked videos to two dudes giving game commentary on Skullgirls who both cannot see, and another guy who played the new Killer Instinct competitively and was actually responsible for some of the audio related sliders being added to the game so that he himself could play the game without being able to see at all. He calls it playing blindfolded because he has like no sight. He doesn't just have a vision impairment, he literally has zero sight according to him. And so those audio sliders make it possible for him to play the game, not just listen to other people playing it, but actually like whoop on them.
Yeah.
Hard. It's pretty cool.
Oh, and for those with motor impairments in the advanced section, there was something about including cooldown periods between button inputs, which is very useful because there's nothing worse than jumping twice, like jumping and not intending to do a double jump and falling off to your death.
Because what happens is that there's a thing called like a myoclonic jerk or motion, right, where it's involuntary. So sometimes tremors are an example of like a milder myoclonic type of jerk motion, where you don't mean to push it, but like maybe your hands keep doing this, like after you've pushed the button, and they just keep shaking, and you don't mean to jump twice, and then you die, right?
Yeah.
Another thing about that is under the motor section, they also said make precise control optional. So one of the examples they gave was Dragon Age 2, right? Most people look at that as being the point at which Dragon Age moved away from turn-based to real-time combat. Real-time. I put that in air quotes because the way Dragon Age's combat engine worked at the time, I don't know about Dragon Age Inquisition because I have zero interest in playing that game. Just putting that out there. So don't. If you play Dragon Age Inquisition and you leave comments about how that doesn't fit what I'm about to say, I'm not talking about you, and I'll probably ignore you because I don't want to play that game. I think it's garbage. It's an MMO that's not an MMO, just like Skyrim, which he plays, and I bag on him all the time. But then I bought him Skyrim Legendary Edition, so I don't care. but like, okay, so the way Dragon Age 2 works as opposed to 1 is Dragon Age, the first game, Origins now, it was Dragon Age when I bought it.
Yeah.
The way Dragon Age worked is it was very much a traditional turn-based system a la Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic. You took a combat turn, your enemy took a combat turn, and it was all fixed interval. So what they did to make Dragon Age 2 appear more real-time was decrease the interval to a hardly noticeable rate. So that you could feel, and it often looks like your turns are overlapping, but the same actions are still happening in a turn-based manner, which is evidenced by the fact that you can actually turn on the combat pause, and it's exactly like the first Dragon Age. It is not real-time. That being said, though, being able to pause the combat in both games helped me win battles that I otherwise wouldn't win because of sometimes slower than desired reaction times. Yeah, reaction times.
Yeah.
I was gonna say asset times. That doesn't make sense. So yeah, that's why I like that game, even though the story's not quite as good.
Yeah.
It was still pretty cool, and they made it graphically prettier, and there were lots of blood and
all that good dark fantasy shit.
Yeah.
But before we close out this video, there's just one thing that we both found interesting, which was the inclusion of sign language in video games.
I almost forgot.
Yeah.
For real. No, dude, I asked them like 4 times what I was supposed to talk about.
Yeah.
Before we started shooting.
Yeah.
4 times. No joke. I'm not over exaggerating. 4 times. What was I talking about again?
Yeah. So yeah, sign language in video games for those who are deaf.
Now, I have my own opinion about this, and the guy who's compiling this resource for developers seems to agree. Sign language in a video game is a terrible idea, and not that people who are deaf should not play video games. I don't think that at all. Sign language is a horrible idea because while there is such a thing as international sign language, it is not a standardized language which is taught across the world to every child or anyone who is interested, or to every child that's deaf or to anyone who's interested, rather. So if you live here, you learn ASL. In South America, you learn some other sign language, and maybe ASL too. In Japan, the sign language they teach the deaf there is completely different than what they teach here. Yeah, some signs are the same, but you know, I forgot what it was. Like the sign for brother, I don't remember what it is because I don't know sign language as of now. I might in the future, but the sign for brother is the same thing as doing this in Japan. So you learn it here, you think you're like, oh hi brother, and then you're doing this. Okay, that's one extreme example, but it's a real one. I didn't make it up. I learned it from a sign language teacher at a community college over here somewhere. So that's why sign language is a horrible idea. Not to mention, from an animation perspective, you would have to accurately animate every single finger articulation to make sure that the sign was 100% correct, so it could not be misinterpreted. You're better off focusing on the relationship between your subtitles and your sound design. So that means including captions with audio cues like onomatopoeia, like the direction from which the sound is coming, and that sort of thing.
Yeah, and I pretty much agree with that because it is kind of takes a lot of time.
Yes, it does.
And starting to learn a little bit of animation through Blender. Yes, I like to use free software.
Because I work for.
Yeah, but already feeling the taste of it, I could see how including sign language into a video game and animating it would just be, it would take a very long time to get it accurately.
And you know, honestly, like, having worked with motion capture data, it doesn't always map one-to-one. It's not that accurate all the time. It's better than having to animate every single thing frame by frame, but to be honest with you, you still have to do a lot of work after. And essentially, like from a financial perspective, having to delay the release of your game because you decided to try sign language in a video game, it would be cool to have a character who signed in a video game, but I'm talking about an entire video game. Dude, imagine your localization issues multiplied by 5 at least. And that's what you're asking for. You're asking for more time and more money, which publishers probably aren't willing to give, especially when good subtitles are a very, very good, less expensive option. So...
yeah, so with that...
that was our little take on the advanced section of the Game Accessibility Guidelines at GameAccessibilityGuidelines.com. It will be linked down there in the description. Down there. Something else is down there, but I might be arrested for that on camera.
Yeah, so I've been Zenburo.
I've been and continue to be Captain Gimpy.
Yeah.
And we shall catch you on the flip side, and hopefully my eye will not be quite so crazy. Yes.
Yes.